My name is Dustin Miller, and I'm known around the neighborhood as the go-to babysitter. I'm a young, black man, and I've always had a soft spot for kids. There's something incredibly rewarding about nurturing their curiosity, helping them learn, and simply providing a safe and fun environment for them to be themselves. My reputation precedes me, thankfully. Parents trust me implicitly, and the kids seem to genuinely enjoy spending time with me. I always welcome every child with open arms, regardless of their background or personality. I believe every child deserves kindness, patience, and a chance to feel comfortable and happy. Babysitting isn't just a job for me, it's a passion. Each interaction is a new opportunity to positively influence a young life, even in a small way. That day started like any other. The sun was shining, birds were chirping, and I was mentally preparing for a day filled with laughter, games, and maybe even a little bit of homework help. I was expecting Sarah and little Timmy, two of my regulars, to arrive any minute. They always brought a certain level of cheerful chaos that I secretly enjoyed. I was just thinking about what games we could play outside when the doorbell rang. I glanced at the clock. It was a bit early for Sarah and Timmy. Peering through the peephole, I saw Karen Edwards standing on my porch with her son, little Billy, in tow. Karen lived a few houses down the street, and we had a somewhat strained relationship, to put it mildly. There was always an undercurrent of condescension and thinly veiled prejudice in her interactions with me. I had tried to remain civil, chalking it up to differing personalities, but there was no denying the uncomfortable feeling I got whenever she was around. I hesitated for a moment before opening the door, a knot forming in my stomach. I braced myself, took a deep breath, and plastered on my most welcoming smile. "Karen, hi. What can I do for you?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral and friendly. She forced a saccharine smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Dustin, dear, how lovely to see you. I was wondering if you might be available to watch Billy for a few hours this afternoon. I have a rather important appointment, and my regular sitter cancelled last minute. You know how it is." I did know how it was, actually. Finding reliable childcare could be a nightmare. Still, something about the situation felt off. The way she was looking at me, the way Billy was clutching her leg and glaring at me. I was already sensing trouble. Before I could even respond, Karen practically shoved Billy forward. "He's all yours. Be good for Dustin, Billy," she chirped, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I'll be back around 5. And with that, before I could even agree or decline, she turned and hurried back to her house, leaving me standing there with Billy, who was now looking at me with a distinctly hostile expression. This was going to be interesting, I thought grimly. Billy stood there, silent and unmoving, his eyes fixed on me with a strange intensity. I knelt down to his level, trying to appear as non-threatening as possible. "Hey Billy, it's nice to meet you. I'm Dustin. What do you like to do for fun?" I asked, hoping to bridge the awkwardness. He didn't answer. He just continued to stare, a defiant glint in his eyes. I tried again. "Did your mom tell you anything about me? Do you want to play with some toys, or maybe read a book?" Still, nothing. He was like a little statue, frozen in place. I sighed inwardly. This was definitely not the way I usually started a babysitting gig. Usually, the kids would be running around, eager to explore and play. Billy was a different story altogether. Suddenly, without warning, Billy took a step forward and spat at my feet. "You're a stupid, racial slur," he hissed, his small face contorted with anger. I recoiled, shocked and taken aback. I had dealt with challenging kids before, kids who were shy, kids who were hyperactive, even kids who were occasionally rude, but never anything like this. The venom in his voice was chilling, especially coming from someone so young. My initial shock quickly turned to anger. I stood up, trying to control my rising frustration. "Billy, that's not okay. You can't say things like that. It's hurtful and disrespectful," I said firmly, my voice low and controlled. He just smirked, a nasty, knowing smirk that sent a shiver down my spine. He then proceeded to kick me hard on the shin. He continued to repeat the slur over and over. And you can't hit people. What's wrong with you? I demanded, trying to understand where this incredibly hateful behavior was coming from. Billy's response was to launch himself at me, hitting and kicking with surprising force. I instinctively stepped back, trying to protect myself without hurting him. I grabbed his wrists to keep him from hitting and kicking. This was clearly not a typical toddler tantrum. This was something else, something deeply ingrained and disturbing. I knew right then and there that I couldn't, in good conscience, continue to babysit Billy. His behavior was completely unacceptable, and I wasn't equipped to deal with that level of hatred and aggression, especially not when it was directed at me. I gently but firmly disentangled myself from him and took him by the hand. Okay, Billy, that's it. I'm going to take you back home. I can't watch you today, I said, my voice calm but resolute. I led him towards the door, hoping to avoid any further confrontation. He didn't resist, but his face was a mask of pure rage. I walked him back to Karen's house, my mind racing. I needed to explain what had happened, but I dreaded the thought of facing her again. I rang Karen's doorbell, Billy still clinging to my hand, his silence even more unnerving than his earlier outburst. The door swung open, and Karen stood there, a smug expression on her face. Well, that was quick. Everything all right? She asked, her tone laced with insincerity. No, actually, everything is not all right, I replied, my voice barely concealing my anger. Billy has been incredibly disrespectful and aggressive. He used some very hurtful language and physically attacked me. I can't watch him. Karen's smugness vanished, replaced by a look of disbelief and then, quickly, anger. What are you talking about? My Billy would never do such a thing. You're lying, she spat, her voice rising in volume. I'm not lying, Karen. I wouldn't make something like this up. He called me names, he hit me, he kicked me. I can't tolerate that kind of behavior, I insisted, trying to remain calm despite her increasingly hostile demeanor. You're just saying that because you don't want to watch him. You probably did something to provoke him, she accused, her face turning red. That's ridiculous. I did nothing to provoke him. I tried to be friendly and welcoming, but he was hostile from the moment he walked in the door, I retorted, my patience wearing thin. He's just a child. He doesn't know any better, she shouted, her voice echoing down the street. He's old enough to know that hitting and using racial slurs is wrong. And frankly, the fact that he even knows those words is concerning, I countered, my anger finally bubbling over. Don't you dare talk to me like that. You're just a babysitter. You have no right, she screamed, her words laced with venom and prejudice. Then it happened. Take him back, now. I demanded, placing him in front of her. He can't stay here with me, he said mean things and hit me. I can't deal with that. Karen's face contorted with rage. You think you can refuse to watch my son? Just because you don't like him? I'll show you, she screeched. She whipped out her phone and started dialing. I'm calling the police. I'm going to tell them you assaulted my child, she shrieked into the phone. My jaw dropped. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was completely fabricating a story to get me in trouble. This was beyond ridiculous. I knew I had to stay calm and not give her any more ammunition. You're making a mistake, Karen, you do not want to do this, I warned her, shaking my head in disbelief. She shot me a triumphant look. Oh, I think I do. You'll regret this, racial slur, she spat. As I stood there, watching her rant and rave, I couldn't help but feel a sense of helplessness and disbelief. How could someone be so consumed by hatred and prejudice? How could she so easily lie and manipulate the situation to fit her warped narrative? I knew this wasn't just about babysitting anymore. This was about something much deeper, something much more insidious. Within minutes, the sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder as they approached. A police car screeched to a halt in front of Karen's house, and two officers emerged, their faces grim and professional. I recognized them instantly, Officer Miller, no relation, and Officer Johnson. They were both familiar with the neighborhood and had dealt with Karen Edwards on more than one occasion. They had a reputation for being fair and impartial, and I felt a small glimmer of hope that they would see through her lies. Karen immediately rushed towards them, her voice dripping with false distress. "Officer! Thank goodness you're here. This man, this racial slur, assaulted my son. He refused to watch him and then attacked him when I tried to intervene," she wailed, pointing dramatically at me. Officer Miller raised an eyebrow, his gaze skeptical. He knew Karen all too well. He turned to me, his expression neutral. "Mr. Miller, can you tell us what happened here?" he asked, his voice calm and authoritative. I took a deep breath and recounted the events of the afternoon, from Billy's initial hostility to his use of racial slurs and physical attacks. I explained that I had simply refused to continue babysitting him and had brought him back to his mother. I emphasized that I had never laid a hand on Billy in anger or with the intention to harm him. As I spoke, I noticed Officer Johnson subtly observing Karen, his eyes narrowed in suspicion. He seemed to sense that something wasn't adding up. When I finished, Officer Miller turned back to Karen, his voice firm. "Mrs. Edwards, is that an accurate account of what happened?" Karen sputtered, her face turning red. "He's lying. He's trying to make my son look bad. He's just a thug," she shouted, her voice laced with hatred. Officer Johnson stepped forward, his expression hardening. "Mrs. Edwards, we've had dealings with you before. We know your tendencies. We're going to need you to calm down and tell us the truth," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. Karen, realizing that her lies weren't working, started to panic. She began to rant and rave, spouting racist insults and making wild accusations. It was clear to anyone with a shred of objectivity that she was completely unhinged. Suddenly, she grabbed Billy by the arm and shoved him towards me. "Hit him, Billy. Hit the racial slur. Show him who's boss," she screamed, her eyes blazing with fury. Then, without warning, she lunged at me, clawing and scratching at my face. The officers reacted instantly. Officer Miller grabbed Karen, pulling her away from me, while Officer Johnson scooped up Billy, shielding him from the escalating chaos. Karen struggled and screamed, her voice echoing down the street. "Let me go. He attacked my son. He's a menace to society," she shrieked, but her words were drowned out by the sound of the police sirens. "Mrs. Edwards, you're under arrest for assault, child endangerment, and making false statements to law enforcement," Officer Miller announced, his voice stern. He wrestled her kicking and screaming into the back of the police car. Officer Johnson, meanwhile, was trying to calm down a terrified Billy, who was sobbing uncontrollably. He knelt down to his level, speaking to him in a gentle and reassuring voice. "It's okay, Billy. You're safe now. Everything's going to be all right," he said, his eyes filled with compassion. As I stood there, watching Karen being driven away in the police car, I felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. The whole ordeal had been incredibly stressful and emotionally draining. I couldn't believe that someone could be so consumed by hatred and prejudice, so willing to lie and manipulate to further their twisted agenda. Officer Johnson approached me, his expression sympathetic. "Mr. Miller, are you all right? Did she hurt you?" he asked, his voice concerned. "I'm okay, just a little shaken up," I replied, touching my face where Karen had scratched me. "She's been a problem in this neighborhood for a long time," he said, shaking his head. "We've had several complaints about her behavior, but this is the worst we've seen. We'll make sure she's held accountable for her actions." He then turned his attention to Billy, who was still clinging to him, his face buried in his shoulder. "We're going to take Billy to Child Protective Services. It's not safe for him to be with her right now," Officer Johnson explained. Hopefully they'll work with him to address those underlying issues. I nodded in agreement. It was clear that Billy needed help, not just because of what he had done that day, but because of the environment in which he was being raised. I hoped that he would get the support and guidance he needed to break free from the cycle of hatred and prejudice. The aftermath of the incident was a whirlwind of activity. I had to give a statement to the police, detailing everything that had happened. The media got wind of the story, and soon my phone was ringing off the hook with reporters wanting to interview me as well. However, I declined to comment. I wasn't interested in becoming a public spectacle or further sensationalizing the situation. All I wanted was to put the whole ordeal behind me and get back to my life. The outpouring of support from the community was overwhelming. Neighbors I barely knew stopped by to offer their condolences and express their outrage at Karen's behavior. Many parents, especially those whose children I babysat, voiced their unwavering support and reaffirmed their trust in me. Sarah and Timmy's mom dropped by with flowers and cookies. "Dustin, honey, you're a treasure. This whole neighborhood is so sorry that you had to deal with that Karen Edwards," she stated with sympathy. "It's okay, Sarah, hopefully she will get the help that she needs." I learned that Karen had been charged with multiple offenses, including assault, child endangerment, making false statements to law enforcement, and a hate crime. She faced a significant amount of jail time, and there was a possibility that she would lose custody of Billy. As for Billy, he was placed in the care of Child Protective Services and was undergoing therapy to address his behavioral issues and the hateful ideologies he had been exposed to. It was a long and challenging road ahead for him, but I hoped that he would eventually find his way to a better life.